introduce himself and tell you what he does.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Hi, Bob.
I also have been working with the company for quite a long time, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off as a programmer, but then I started building my own stuff using Hudson and Jenkins and all the earlier tools.
Mm-hmm.
And people liked it so much they wanted me to put their projects in there, and one thing led to another, and now I'm the build Devops release guy.
Oh.
So I do very little programming these days unless it's related to pipelines. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's great.
We're moving everything as much as we can into Kubernetes, Docker images, Kubernetes. And that's how we're deploying all of our applications these days. In fact, we're trying to put as much into Kubernetes as possible. I just got through configuring Jenkins to deploy via Flux, complete with plugins, projects, and everything. Just one click. So
yeah,
that's it.
I would also like to let you know that I'm CKS certified. So I wrote Kubernetes certification recently.
Well, that's good because we're going to need several more Kubernetes clusters provisioned in the near future for stuff that stuff that I need.
So you guys are using self-managed cluster or EKS, or how are you guys?
It's a self-managed cluster.
Oh,
we're on Azure on my side of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing it that way. Typically because I prefer to use open source tools whenever I can, and not pay much of our budget for things that we can actually handle ourselves with very little intervention. It doesn't really take too much of anybody's time to maintain these clusters once they're up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it easier to do what I want to do if I have complete access, whereas we tested out the AKS briefly, and from my point of view, it was more trouble than it was worth. So
you guys wanted to deploy with like a Kubedium Corps, or like you just want it manually, like how?
Oh, I prefer everything to be as well. I mean, I like manual installation of open source tools, but then I like to automate everything.
Oh, that's great.
It's a personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
I like having everything in my control. I'm kind of a control freak that way.
Yeah,
at least I know what's going on, and it helps me when troubleshooting, because I know all the internals and how things were put together, as opposed to relying on somebody somewhere that provisioned a cluster that I can't even get access to. As a personal thing, I don't mind doing a lot of the grunt work.
Mm-hmm.
So Adina, I got a question for you. Just to let you also know, Bob and I are basically two sides of the same coin. So Bob works on one side, which would be on one of our products called Insights, and that product rests in Azure. And the other side would be where I'm in, and we're in AWS for that. And on our side, we have our legacy product, which is called Memory, MEMRI, that will be sunset down the future, replaced by Insights. And then we do a lot of the back-end work and build a lot of the tools and systems for the interviewers and all the back-end type of area. We are moving slowly, but we are moving away from AWS to go into Azure. The timeline for that is kind of flexible. It's going kind of a little bit here and there and everywhere, but we eventually, our end goal is actually to move, I'd say 90% of our stuff from AWS into Azure. But we do have two groups, and you will be working predominantly with the AWS side, but in this place, everybody, it's all hands in whenever it's needed. So, you will get work that's going on in the Azure. And as I said, we are planning on moving stuff, so you'll be part of the team that would actually move from the AWS to the Azure as that goes on. So I wanted to ask you a couple of things because I was looking at your resume, and I wanted to know, you had put it down in here that you said that you had advanced PowerShell work. Can you tell me what was the advanced PowerShell and what did it do and what made it advanced?
Okay. So basically, I've been working on like Windows servers. So when it comes to advanced, so it basically depends on the working on different requirements where PowerShell was being used as a scripted language. So that was related to like one of the brief engagement where I was working on like like Windows based ecosystem. So there were like different scripts that have wrote some of them being related to application specific image optimization requirement. One of them like being for health checks requirement that we can like that we did different cluster as well as different environments. So there were script like specific to scripts that have been written in PowerShell.
Okay. And I also saw here that you have experience with CloudWatch and setting up CloudWatch dashboards.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit? What did you do? And
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so well, like we monitor, in fact, like all the infrastructure, like competence, including like EC2 instances, RDS and SNS topics, like everything for the matter. So since we are using like CloudWatch with SNS topic, and we are alerting like solution to like signed on Slack channel. So we actually created a dashboard, and basically on that whatever alerts get created based on the metric threshold like defined, it gets triggered to the Slack channels, which basically involves like respective stakeholders from the business team as well as like from technical side. So we use the dashboards across and runs. We currently have 4 environment for dev, QA, and there is one staging and running. There is recently have been provisioned, and we create these dashboards to monitor like those environments for infrastructure services so if I just give you an example of some of those metrics that we monitor, let's take for example like RDS or RDS cluster. So we monitor lock wait timeout, we monitor transaction timeout, we monitor open open connection timeout errors, we monitor log running queries or log wait timeout solutions. So like that's where we actually create dashboards for like getting like getting a single window visibility for like entire environment.
Okay. Interesting. So I see another one here that you have worked with Ansible. Have you used Ansible with Windows, or is it predominantly with Linux that you've done with Ansible?
So basically, I have used them for Windows as well as Linux both, but majorly for the Linux. So I've used more on Linux, but yeah, I do know how it works for Windows basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Using using like different protocols to communicate with like inventory servers for Windows that uses RM as a protocol as compared to Linux it uses SSH. So yeah.
I also saw that you. Oh, sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I found Ansible working with Windows to be not ideal.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot more maintenance than using it with Linux.
Yeah.
And to that end, most of the stuff that I work on is all Linux based, whereas I think Ed's is mostly Windows.
Yeah, Windows based. Yeah. Yeah. On our side of the group with the AWS environment, it's predominantly a .NET stack. You know, it's going to be all Windows based .NET and whatnot. And on Bob's side, you're going to find predominantly Linux, Oracle, and they have Jenkins, which is for their CI/CD, and also we use the Azure Devops.
Yeah. So
eventually we will like combine them all, but again, for right now, that's how it's set up.
Oh, all right. So basically, you guys are using more of like Azure DevOps or Jenkins? Which one is more?
Well,
50-50.
Yeah,
I use Jenkins exclusively, and we deployed Artifactory, which is also our Docker and our Helm chart repository.
Oh, that's great.
And we use Flux to deploy it to the Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah, that's great. I've experience on all of them, like Jenkins, Flux, and Azure DevOps as well.
That's excellent. Well, as long as we're going down that road, we unfortunately we're very light on monitoring telemetry in our applications. In fact, there's basically nothing except just log files, which most of the time aren't even very helpful, to tell you the truth, but that's just what the developers put in there. So we're working on installing some telemetry into our applications, but that is going to require some sort of a server like a Prometheus server. And I see that you have a couple of bullet points on Prometheus in your resume. And so I was wondering how experienced you are at actually setting up and configuring a Prometheus server basically from scratch.
So basically, majorly, I used we used Prometheus and Grafana that reads the integration from like Kubernetes cluster monitoring. So the Prometheus is generally is a tool that basically describes all the data from like different metrics, and we usually use for that purpose. We did not like only monitor the Kubernetes cluster, but also the control plane as well. Because with AWS you have very limited access to the control plane, but you would definitely require monitoring for for fixing or like for troubleshooting any kind of possible an issue that you may encounter in the architecture. So we that's the main use case of using Prometheus as well as Grafana for that purpose. But Grafana is majorly for dashboard creation and to the retailers. I have exclusively worked on that app, like set it from scratch as well.
Yeah. My question was, have you installed it, from nothing, not an existing server or some sort of a host managed point and click kind of thing? From my side, that's what I would be interested in, because that way I feel it's easier to maintain and know what's going on in the internals. So installing it, and that's exactly, monitoring, that's what we want to use it for. And I know Grafana is, it's a UI tool to cut and slice and cut the data so you can view it in different ways. But the server itself, and I think we also have use cases for Elasticsearch, so which just kind of falls into the same area. But really, setting them up from nothing is really one of the goals. In fact, for all the tools, not just for Prometheus, for this position, is really in-depth knowledge of server configurations. And that sort of thing. Ed, can you elaborate on that one?
Yeah, well, for Kubernetes, I'll tell you the main use case that I have worked on. So I've got opportunity to work on on-prem architecture, as well as I've created different components, like different control plane components like API server, control manager, etcd cluster. I have that these from scratch. I have these things from scratch using RPMs as well as binaries. So I do have experience with that. But in production environment, unfortunately, we are majorly using EKS based architecture, that which is like AWS cloud service. But I do have extensive experience working installation on Linux platforms using RPMs or package managers or like different repos for that matter. So like you mentioned, ELK stack, I have set up ELK stack from the scratch on Linux machine using the RPMs using different binaries. So I mainly use it with file database integration where file is being used as solution for like collecting and sending logs to ELK stack, and where Elasticsearch is being used for indexing the data, and eventually Kibana is being used as a one-step solution for the logs management. Also, in some of the cases, we used Logstash rock pattern based filtration as well. So, and I do have like set it up from the scratch. So, uh, there are different configuration files like for the file beat. There is .ml. Then there is for Logstash, you have Logstash.yaml file where you actually define all these all the differences. Similarly for the Kibana configuration, uh, we've used Kibana configuration file. So I have extensive experience setting it up.
Good. So, Aditya, I wanted to ask you also, I saw here that you mentioned that you have experience with data protection, specifically GDPR and CCPA.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any need for the GDPR because we're strictly a U.S.-based data company. We don't use anything outside of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have to worry about CCPA and the other state requirements that are coming online this year and next year.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me what exactly you did with the data protection? What was your role? What did you do?
So, the main use case why we are using the data protection is for the encryption capabilities like password management, or like securing our sensitive data and sensitive data discovery. So we are using AWS services services for that purpose. So Amazon data protection is a main service that we use for so there are like different categories why we actually manage using this. I access as well as working with the network and network and application protection using AWS Shields as well as VFA. We extensively use Graph for different requirements in our architecture for the like application standpoint. So we use AWS certificate management manager, we use passwords certificate authorities, AWS secret manager, and for like this is for the dynamic key value pair management. So yeah, that's what I use.
So now, how does that relate specifically to GDPR and CCPA? I mean, that would be, what you explained there would be something that is pretty common for a lot of places, but you did mention GDPR and CCPA in your resume.
Mm-hmm.
So how did it relate specific to those two things?
So basically, CCPA nothing but data privacy law that ensures customer and be aware of which information a business can collect from them, right? So these are like different things. So I can tell you that the application we have that we have a customer base across California. So as well, I have written different Lambda functions where the image optimization is done. I was mentioning earlier, so that this image optimization basically looks out of different headers, which basically is kept in mind for CCPA specific requirements that whatever data is required and certain headers with which does not use these customer requirements to avoid breach of CCPA.
Okay. So did you actually have to study up on CCPA and GDPR, or because that is, CCPA is definitely something that we worried about, and also with the other states like Virginia and all that are coming online in July. Did you do any particular certifications or studying or anything on the policies that are required? Because it also involves not only just securing it, but there's also reporting requirements. So did you involved in any of that?
Well, I'm not necessarily majorly studied on that, but I do have fair amount of idea while I was working on it. We have documentation available in our current project. So I just gone through the documentation and have got again knowledge around that. But unfortunately, I've never used take any certification or courses on that.
Okay. So now another question. I see with Epsilon, you mentioned in your resume that you worked with CloudFormation and Terraform with the same company.
Yeah.
Why would you use two technologies like that that are basically similar? Can you give me a reason and explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I had I got opportunity to work with different modules with a project. So there are some of the modules which are different, are running different technology stacks. So I'll tell you an example for that. So in one of the module, we were not using EKS. We were using Docker Swarm based container orchestration solutions. That's where the CloudFormation is being used. And now in the current module that I'm working on the project, so there is more on Terraform side. So these are sub modules with one project umbrella, but these are 4 different applications. So that's the main use of having the 2 infrastructure as a core technology and a single engagement. Yeah.
Okay. And now that you've got experience with both of them, which do you prefer?
So I prefer Terraform.
Okay. Can you say why?
Because I think if you learn Terraform, obviously you can if you again migrate to Azure, so you don't need to learn again something else. Like if you are using CloudFormation template, then you gotta learn if you are using ARM templates or something, then you gotta learn those. So I prefer Terraform over CloudFormation.
All right. Makes sense. Terraform is also easier to learn than CloudFormation.
Yeah.
No structure.
Yeah, bro.
The structure in CloudFormation is a mess. Terraform has more structure to it.
Yeah.
So I also saw that you have, and you touched on it earlier with Bob, with the Grafana. So with Grafana, where did you use that? Do you have experience with using Grafana for monitoring Windows servers and things such as SQL Server?
Yeah, I do have experience in Grafana, but not. Can you just walk me through the question again once again?
So with Grafana, we would say we want to looking at say a SQL Server to see how many requests are going into a SQL Server, what's the load. Being able to visualize how hard and how heavy a particular SQL server is being utilized, and basically give off alerts if need to.
So basically, we are majorly using Grafana for monitoring the Kubernetes cluster. So these are Linux-based Kubernetes run by the use case that you have shared, for verifying the load balancers and monitoring the different metrics on database or SQL server side. I would suggest only Grafana for Grafana to use application to scrape all the data from different metrics. So yeah.
Okay. So after saying that, then what would you use as a dashboard tool for monitoring, say, SQL Server and its utilization?
So, well, I would suggest to use New Relic. So that is an application performance monitoring tool, and that has a huge list of monitoring possibilities. When it comes to database or SQL Server monitoring, there are different metrics that you can monitor, that including like connection timeout, like loading time, like deadlock situations or like thread consumption, with respect to application requests and the like load average on the database. So you can use the two lines that are like used extensively. That is one of my project, like that is one of project requirements.
On the downside, the New Relic is very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It ain't cheap.
But I personally think that for the things it provides, I think it's worth it.
I don't doubt it's worth it. It's just a matter of actually getting approval for it.
Yeah.
That becomes the problem.
Yeah.
That becomes the problem sometimes here.
Yeah, budget's a different story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Dina, I wanted to ask another couple more questions. One is, so I've heard you say you got work with Windows and you got work with Linux systems. How comfortable are you with